Thanksgiving dinner, 2023. I sit at my childhood dining room table as my cousin Derek brags about his latest BMW lease while everyone fawns over him. I have been listening to this for 26 years. When Derek casually asks what I have been up to lately, I mention my tech company just got acquired. Derek laughs, asking how much my little app sold for. I quietly say, $67 million. The room goes silent. Derek's face turns white. Uncle Marcus throws his wine glass against the wall. Derek screams that I am lying and storms out. My mom starts crying. Growing up, I was the shadow in Derek's spotlight. Every family gathering, every holiday, every casual weekend visit revolved around celebrating my cousin's endless achievements and potential. While Derek received his cherry red Mustang convertible for his 16th birthday, complete with custom leather seats and a premium sound system, I inherited my grandfather's rust-covered Ford pickup truck with a broken air conditioner and a transmission that slipped in third gear. The differences started early and never stopped. When Derek struggled with his SAT prep, Uncle Marcus hired a $500 per hour private tutor from Princeton. When I needed help with the same test, my dad handed me a worn paperback study guide from the library. Derek spent his summers touring European capitals, learning French in Bordeaux and art history in Florence. I spent my summers cutting grass and trimming hedges for Johnson's Landscaping, earning $8 an hour under the brutal Texas Sunday. Christmas mornings were particularly painful. Derek unwrapped boxes containing the latest gaming consoles, designer jackets, and expensive electronics, while my presents consisted of practical items like socks, school supplies, and gift cards to chain restaurants. My parents would watch Derek's excitement with genuine joy, then turn to me with apologetic smiles as if my modest gifts were somehow embarrassing in comparison. The praise never stopped flowing in Derek's direction. When he made junior varsity basketball as a sophomore, Uncle Marcus called it proof of his natural athleticism and leadership potential. When I made varsity soccer as a junior and team captain as a senior, my aunt dismissed it as a participation trophy sport that anyone could succeed at. Derek's mediocre grades were explained away as evidence of his creative mind being stifled by conventional education. My straight A's were attributed to having no social life or real-world experience. Family dinners became exercises in enduring constant comparisons. Derek was taking challenging business courses and networking with important people. I was wasting time studying computer programming, which everyone agreed was just glorified typing that would be automated away within a decade. Derek had ambition and vision. I was playing it safe with technical skills that would never lead to real success. The pattern continued through college selection. Derek gained admission to Georgetown University's prestigious business program, which cost $45,000 per year. My parents and Uncle Marcus celebrated this achievement for months, calling it proof that excellence recognizes excellence. When I received a full scholarship to Texas A&M for computer engineering, the response was notably more subdued. Derek was investing in his future at an elite institution. I was taking the cheap route that would limit my opportunities. Even our dating lives became subjects for comparison. Derek's girlfriends were beautiful, accomplished women from prominent families, who would open doors for his career advancement. My relationships were casual and short-lived, which my family interpreted as evidence that I lacked Derek's natural charisma and social intelligence. The financial disparities were staggering. Derek never worked during high school or college, allowing him to focus entirely on his studies and networking opportunities. His parents covered tuition, room and board, spring break trips, and a generous monthly allowance for entertainment and clothing. I worked 20 hours per week at the campus computer lab while carrying a full course load, sending money home to help with my parents' mortgage payments. But what really drove the wedge deeper was how Derek seemed to genuinely believe he deserved this preferential treatment. He never acknowledged the advantages or expressed gratitude for the opportunities handed to him. Instead, he developed an entitled attitude that treated luxury and praise as his natural birthright. When family members questioned whether maybe things were a bit unbalanced, Derek would become defensive and claim that his success resulted purely from his own merit and hard work. The breaking point for me came during my sophomore year when I started my first business venture. I had identified a gap in the market for simple web design services, targeting small businesses that could not afford major marketing agencies. Working nights and weekends from my dorm room, I built a client base of local restaurants, auto repair shops, and retail stores who needed basic websites and online presence management. What began as spite-motivated entrepreneurship turned into something much larger than I had ever imagined. Within 6 months, my little side business was generating more monthly revenue than Derek's allowance. Within a year, I was earning more than my father's annual salary. But I made a crucial decision that would shape everything that followed. I chose to operate completely in secret, using shell companies and business manager aliases to hide my growing success from my family. I wanted to see how long they would continue worshiping Derek while completely overlooking the actual achievement happening right under their noses. I created an elaborate system of financial privacy, routing payments through multiple business accounts, and maintaining the appearance of being a struggling college student. My parents continued sending me their modest monthly checks to help with expenses, while I quietly accumulated wealth that dwarfed anything Derek had ever touched. The secret felt like power. Every family gathering where Derek dominated conversations with his theoretical business plans and networking stories, I sat quietly knowing that I was actually building something real. Every condescending comment about my practical major or lack of social ambition felt like fuel for proving them all completely wrong. But the real twist that changed everything happened during Derek's senior year of college. Through careful investigation and overheard phone conversations, I discovered that Derek's golden child image was built on something far more fragile than anyone realized. He had quietly failed out of Georgetown's business program during his junior year, but had been lying to the family about his academic status for over 18 months. While Derek spent his days crafting elaborate stories about his non-existent college success, I was building something that would eventually reshape our family's entire understanding of achievement and worth. My web design business had accidentally stumbled onto a goldmine that none of us could have predicted. During my junior year, one of my restaurant clients mentioned how difficult it was to manage table reservations, staff schedules, and customer communications across multiple platforms. He was using 3 different systems that never talked to each other, creating chaos that cost him money and frustrated his customers. I spent one weekend building a simple integration tool that connected his reservation system with his staff scheduling app and automated customer confirmation messages. Word spread quickly through the small business community. Other restaurant owners wanted the same solution. Then retail store managers started asking for similar inventory and customer management integration. Within 6 months, what had started as a one-off favor had evolved into a comprehensive small business automation platform that streamlined operations for companies with 5 to 50 employees. The demand exploded beyond anything I had anticipated. I was working 18-hour days, writing code until 3 in the morning, then attending classes, then meeting with clients, then writing more code. My social life disappeared completely. I missed parties, dating opportunities, and normal college experiences that Derek enjoyed effortlessly on his parents' dime. But I was building something that mattered, something that solved real problems for real people. My client base grew from 10 businesses to 50, then to 200. I hired my first employee, a brilliant programmer named Jake, who was struggling to pay for his computer science classes. Then I hired Sarah, a business major who could handle client relationships while I focused on product development. By my senior year, I was running a team of 8 people, all of whom believed they were working for a company called Streamline Solutions, owned by a mysterious businessman named David Chen, who preferred to communicate through email and never appeared at client meetings. The revenue numbers became surreal. My monthly income reached 6 figures by the time Derek was supposed to be graduating from Georgetown. I was quietly making more money than most executives while living in a shared apartment and eating ramen noodles to maintain my cover story. Every dollar I earned was reinvested into expanding the business, improving the software, and hiring more talented people who could help scale our operations. The emotional toll of maintaining this secret double life was enormous. I watched my parents stress about their mortgage payments while I had enough money sitting in business accounts to pay off their house 10 times over. I listened to them apologize for not being able to afford better opportunities for me, while I was creating opportunities they could never have imagined. But revealing the truth felt premature. I needed more proof, more validation, more undeniable evidence that their assumptions about Derek and me were completely backwards. The breakthrough came during the summer after my graduation, when a major tech company in Austin approached me about acquiring Streamline Solutions. They had been watching our growth and were impressed by our customer retention rates and expansion potential. The initial offer was $12 million, which would have been life-changing money for most recent college graduates. I turned it down, not because the money was not appealing, but because I could see that we were just getting started. Our software was solving fundamental problems that every small business faced. We were building something with the potential to transform entire industries. The acquiring company increased their offer to $25 million, then to $40 million as they realized how serious I was about the platform's long-term potential. During these negotiations, I discovered that Derek's deception was even more elaborate than I had suspected. He had not only failed out of Georgetown, but had also been lying about having a job lined up after graduation. While his parents bragged to everyone about his upcoming position at a prestigious consulting firm, Derek was actually unemployed and secretly applying for entry-level positions at companies that required no college degree verification. The contrast became absurd. Derek's parents threw him an elaborate graduation party, complete with catered food and congratulatory speeches about his bright future in business leadership. I attended that party knowing that I was in the final stages of negotiating a deal that would make me worth more than everyone in that room combined, while Derek had no job prospects and no legitimate education credentials. I made the decision to hold out for an even bigger acquisition offer. By this point, 3 different companies were competing for Streamline Solutions, driving the price higher with each round of negotiations. The bidding war continued for 8 months, during which time Derek moved back in with his parents and began what would become a pattern of elaborate excuses for why his career launch was taking longer than expected. The final acquisition offer came in November of 2023. $67 million for complete ownership of Streamline Solutions, plus retention bonuses for key employees and consulting contracts that would keep me involved in the transition process. I accepted the deal with the condition that the transaction remain confidential until I decided to make it public. Standing in my apartment that night, staring at the signed paperwork that made me a multimillionaire before my 26th birthday, I felt a mixture of triumph and hollowness. I had proven something important about hard work, innovation, and real achievement versus inherited privilege and empty networking. But I had also spent 4 years of my life living a lie, isolating myself from family relationships, and building resentment that had grown into something close to obsession. The question now was how and when to reveal the truth. Derek's fake graduation party had been painful to endure, but I realized that Thanksgiving dinner would provide the perfect opportunity to finally share what I had been building in secret. I had no idea that Derek's reaction would expose problems far deeper than anyone in our family had suspected. The 24 hours following my Thanksgiving revelation created a chaos that none of us had prepared for. Derek's explosive reaction and dramatic exit from dinner was just the beginning of what would become the most turbulent period in our family's history. Uncle Marcus called my parents' house at 6:30 the next morning, demanding proof of my acquisition deal. His voice carried a desperate edge that went beyond simple disbelief. He insisted that I produce documentation, bank statements, and legal contracts to verify my claims. When my father suggested that maybe Derek was having trouble accepting the news, Uncle Marcus exploded into accusations that I was either lying outright or had gotten involved in some kind of illegal scheme that would eventually destroy our family's reputation. My mother spent most of Friday crying and apologizing for years of family dynamics that suddenly looked completely different in light of my hidden success. She admitted that she had always suspected I was downplaying my achievements, but had never imagined anything approaching this scale. The guilt was overwhelming her, as she realized how many times she had compared me unfavorably to Derek, how many opportunities for pride and celebration she had missed, because everyone was too focused on Derek's theoretical potential. Derek himself had disappeared completely. His parents could not reach him by phone, and his apartment was empty when Uncle Marcus drove over to check on him. His social media accounts went dark, and mutual friends reported that he was not responding to messages. The mystery of his whereabouts added another layer of tension to an already volatile situation. By Saturday afternoon, Derek resurfaced with a vengeance. He called my parents' house while I was helping my dad fix their kitchen sink, demanding to speak with me directly. His tone was aggressive and accusatory, as he launched into a detailed explanation of why my story could not possibly be true. According to Derek's analysis, no legitimate tech company would pay $67 million for a software platform built by someone without proper business education or industry connections. Derek's arguments were surprisingly sophisticated. He pointed out that major acquisitions require extensive due diligence, board approvals, and regulatory compliance that would be impossible to complete without generating public records and media coverage. He questioned why there had been no announcements in business publications, no mentions on company websites, and no evidence of the transaction anywhere online. His skepticism was methodical and convincing enough that even I began to worry about how to respond to his challenges. The real problem emerged when Derek announced his intention to verify my claims through independent research. He had already started calling tech companies in Austin, claiming to be a business journalist investigating recent acquisition activity in the small business software sector. He was using fake credentials and professional aliases to extract information from company representatives who might have knowledge of the Streamline Solutions deal. Within days, Derek's amateur investigation had expanded into something much more dangerous. He created fake LinkedIn profiles, identifying himself as a market research analyst, and began reaching out to my former clients, current employees, and business partners. His inquiries were becoming increasingly specific and sophisticated as he gathered information that could potentially expose confidential aspects of my business operations. The situation escalated dramatically when Derek convinced his parents to formally demand that I prove my claims by investing in Derek's new business venture. Uncle Marcus called my father and announced that if I really had access to millions of dollars, I should be eager to help Derek launch his own consulting firm. They wanted a $250,000 investment to demonstrate my good faith and family loyalty. The demand felt like extortion disguised as an opportunity for family bonding. My parents were caught in an impossible position. They wanted to believe in my success and were beginning to acknowledge years of unfair treatment. But they also faced pressure from Uncle Marcus, who threatened to cut off all family relationships if they continued supporting what he called my elaborate deception. The extended family was choosing sides in a conflict that was tearing apart decades of shared history and mutual support. Derek's behavior became increasingly erratic as his investigation continued. He started showing up at my apartment building unannounced, trying to follow me to meetings and business appointments. Building security had to escort him out of the lobby on multiple occasions after he demanded access to tenant directories and visitor logs. My neighbors complained about a strange man questioning them about my daily routines and asking whether they had noticed expensive cars or unusual activity around my unit. The harassment extended to my professional life when Derek discovered the address of my former office space. He began loitering in the lobby of the building, attempting to intercept employees and clients as they entered or left meetings. Several of my former team members contacted me with concerns about a man claiming to be my business partner who was asking detailed questions about our software platform and client relationships. Derek's obsession was damaging relationships that I had spent years building. Some clients began questioning whether their business information had been compromised. My former employees worried that confidential aspects of our operations were being exposed to unauthorized parties. The acquisition company's legal team expressed concerns about potential security breaches that could affect the transition process and ongoing business operations. The family dynamics had shifted completely. My parents were defensive about their past treatment of me, but also frustrated by my years of secrecy. Uncle Marcus was doubling down on his accusations, claiming that my refusal to provide immediate proof was evidence of guilt. Derek's parents were enabling his increasingly disturbing behavior while portraying him as the victim of my supposed deception. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Through conversations with my grandmother and careful investigation of family financial arrangements, I learned that Uncle Marcus and his wife had been secretly borrowing money from my parents for over 2 years. The loans were supposedly temporary assistance to help with Derek's college expenses and career transition, but the amounts were substantial enough to explain my parents' financial stress and their inability to help with my own educational costs. Derek's golden child status had been maintained through a complex web of family financial manipulation that left my parents struggling while Derek continued living beyond his means. The revelation that my parents had been sacrificing their own security to maintain Derek's privileged lifestyle added a layer of betrayal that went far beyond simple favoritism. As Derek's investigation intensified and his behavior became more desperate, I realized that the situation was approaching a crisis point that would force everyone to confront truths much more complicated and damaging than my hidden business success. Derek was not just questioning my achievements. He was fighting to preserve an identity and lifestyle that depended on maintaining illusions that were already beginning to crumble. Derek's investigation had evolved from skeptical inquiry into active sabotage by the second week of December. What I discovered through my business attorney was far more serious than family drama or jealous harassment. Derek was systematically attempting to destroy the professional reputation and business relationships that I had spent years building. The first major incident occurred when Derek successfully impersonated me during a phone call with one of my largest former clients. Using information he had gathered through his amateur detective work, he called the owner of a regional restaurant chain and claimed to be Ray Manning calling to discuss irregularities in our software integration. Derek's performance was convincing enough that the client shared confidential information about their current operations and expressed concerns about potential problems with the system I had built for them. Derek used that conversation to make additional calls to other clients, each time gathering more information that he could use to make his next impersonation more believable. Within days, he had contacted nearly 30% of my former client base, creating confusion and suspicion about the legitimacy of my business operations. Several clients called the acquisition company directly to verify whether their software systems would continue receiving support, raising red flags about potential contract complications. The situation became genuinely dangerous when Derek began reaching out to my former employees using fake business credentials. He created an elaborate cover story about being a federal investigator looking into potential tax evasion and money laundering in the tech startup sector. Derek's research had been thorough enough that he could reference specific projects, client names, and internal procedures that made his claims seem credible to people who had trusted me with sensitive information. 3 of my former team members contacted me within the same week to report suspicious inquiries from someone claiming to represent government agencies. Jake, my first employee and most loyal supporter, had almost provided Derek with detailed financial records and client lists before becoming suspicious about the investigator's credentials and verification procedures. The near miss revealed how close Derek had come to accessing information that could have exposed both my business partners and clients to serious legal and financial risks. Derek's campaign expanded beyond direct communication when he began filing formal complaints with business regulatory agencies. He submitted detailed reports to the Better Business Bureau, the Texas Attorney General's office, and the Securities and Exchange Commission, claiming that I was operating an unregistered investment scheme that defrauded small businesses through fraudulent software sales. Each complaint was carefully crafted with just enough accurate information to trigger preliminary investigations that required time and legal resources to resolve. The regulatory complaints created exactly the kind of public record that Derek had been claiming was missing from my acquisition story. His strategy was becoming clear. If he could not find evidence that my deal was fake, he would create evidence that my business operations were illegitimate. The complaints would generate government documentation that he could then use to support his claims that I was involved in criminal activity. My attorney's investigation revealed the full scope of Derek's impersonation scheme. He had created multiple fake identities across social media platforms, professional networking sites, and business directories. His aliases included a business journalist, a federal investigator, a market research analyst, and a private investigator specializing in corporate fraud. Derek had invested considerable time and effort into making each identity appear legitimate with detailed backstories, professional headshots, and connection networks that reinforced his credibility. The most disturbing discovery was that Derek had been secretly recording family conversations since Thanksgiving dinner. Using a smartphone app that could capture phone calls and in-person discussions, he had documented hours of private conversations between family members, discussing my business success and their reactions to the acquisition news. Derek's plan was to edit these recordings into a narrative that would support his claims about family dysfunction and financial fraud. Derek's mother inadvertently revealed his media strategy during a heated phone call with my parents. She admitted that Derek had been in contact with local business reporters and television journalists who specialized in exposing corporate misconduct and white-collar crime. He was preparing to offer them an exclusive story about tech industry fraud and family betrayal that would position him as the whistleblower hero who exposed my deception before it could harm additional victims. The media angle was particularly sophisticated because Derek understood that public accusations would be difficult to refute, even if they were eventually proven false. Business journalists were interested in stories about young entrepreneurs and tech industry success, especially when those stories included elements of family conflict and hidden scandals. Derek's narrative would be compelling television, regardless of its accuracy. My parents were devastated by the revelation that Derek had been recording their private conversations and planning to expose family business to public scrutiny. My mother felt violated by the betrayal of trust and questioned whether Derek had ever genuinely cared about family relationships or had always viewed us as potential sources of material for his own advancement. The situation reached a crisis point when I learned that Derek's impersonation activities had attracted attention from actual federal investigators. The Securities and Exchange Commission had received enough complaints and suspicious activity reports to open a preliminary inquiry into Streamline Solutions and its acquisition. While the investigation would eventually confirm that all my business activities were legitimate, the process would require months of legal cooperation and could damage relationships with clients and business partners who preferred to avoid any association with government scrutiny. Derek's sabotage campaign was succeeding in ways that went beyond proving or disproving my acquisition claims. He was creating exactly the kind of chaos and uncertainty that would make my business success feel hollow and my family relationships feel poisoned. Even if I could eventually prove that every aspect of my story was true, the damage to trust and family unity might be irreversible. But Derek had made a critical error in his elaborate deception scheme. His fake credentials and impersonation activities were themselves illegal, and his communications with government agencies contained false statements that constituted federal crimes. The private investigator I hired to document Derek's harassment had gathered evidence of multiple felonies that could result in serious criminal charges. The irony was perfect and terrible. Derek's attempt to expose me as a fraud had turned him into an actual criminal whose actions could destroy his future far more completely than my success had ever threatened his identity. The golden child who had spent 26 years being protected from consequences was about to face the most serious consequences of his life. The private investigator's report arrived on a Tuesday morning in January and contained revelations that would reshape our family's understanding of everything we thought we knew about Derek and his golden child status. What I read in that 47-page document was far worse than I had imagined when I hired someone to document his harassment campaign. Derek was not just unemployed since his supposed graduation from Georgetown. He had been living an elaborate fiction for over 3 years. The investigator had obtained his actual academic records, which showed that Derek had failed out of Georgetown during the second semester of his sophomore year. He had never taken a single business course at the university level. His entire educational narrative was fabricated. The financial investigation was equally shocking. Derek owed $147,000 in credit card debt spread across 11 different accounts. His student loans totaled an additional $83,000 for educational services that he had never actually received. The BMW that he drove to every family gathering was 4 months behind on payments and scheduled for repossession within 2 weeks. But the most devastating discovery was the criminal background check. Derek had been arrested for check fraud during his brief time at Georgetown, writing fake checks to pay for textbooks, meal plans, and dormitory fees. The charges were eventually dismissed when Uncle Marcus paid restitution, and Derek agreed to withdraw from the university. But the incident created a criminal record that he had hidden from our family for over 4 years. Derek's current financial situation was maintained through an increasingly desperate series of schemes that approached outright theft. He had been using fake identification to open new credit accounts, forging employment verification letters to obtain loans, and creating fraudulent business licenses to establish lines of credit with suppliers and vendors. His lifestyle was funded entirely through debt that he had no realistic means of repaying. The investigation also revealed the full extent of Uncle Marcus and Aunt Linda's financial problems. They had mortgaged their house 3 times to cover Derek's expenses and their own living costs. They owed my parents $28,000 in loans that were supposedly temporary assistance but had been accumulating interest for over 2 years. Their total debt exceeded $200,000, most of which had been used to maintain Derek's image as a successful college graduate and promising young businessman. My parents had been sending Uncle Marcus $500 per month for nearly 3 years, money that came from their retirement savings and emergency funds. The financial stress that I had attributed to general economic pressures was actually the result of my parents sacrificing their own security to enable Derek's deception. They had been paying for Derek's BMW, his apartment rent, and his credit card minimums, while believing they were helping with temporary career transition expenses. The scope of Derek's deception extended far beyond our family. He had been representing himself as a Georgetown business graduate to potential employers, landlords, and romantic partners. His dating profiles claimed advanced degrees and professional achievements that were completely fictitious. His job applications contained false information about education, work history, and personal references that could constitute criminal fraud if employers attempted to verify his credentials. Derek's impersonation of me to business contacts was just the latest evolution of a pattern that had been developing for years. The investigator found evidence that Derek had previously impersonated other family members and friends to obtain information, access services, and create opportunities that would have been unavailable under his real identity. His entire adult life had been built on systematic deception that was becoming more elaborate and risky as his financial situation deteriorated. The revelation that affected me most personally was learning how Derek's lies had impacted my parents' perception of their own success as parents. They had been genuinely proud of Derek's supposed achievements, while feeling like failures for not providing me with similar opportunities and advantages. My mother had spent years apologizing for not being able to afford better educational options for me, never knowing that the money she felt guilty about not having was actually being sent to support Derek's fraudulent lifestyle. My father's reaction to the investigator's report was heartbreaking. He realized that his decades of praising Derek's potential and comparing me unfavorably to my cousin had been based on complete fabrications. The nephew he had held up as an example of ambition and achievement was actually a criminal whose success existed only in elaborate lies that my parents had been financially supporting without their knowledge. Uncle Marcus and Aunt Linda's response to being confronted with evidence of Derek's deception was denial, followed by desperate anger. They accused the private investigator of fabricating documents and claimed that I had orchestrated an elaborate conspiracy to destroy Derek's reputation. Their reaction revealed how deeply invested they were in maintaining illusions that had become central to their own identities as successful parents. The criminal charges that Derek was facing for impersonating me were serious enough to warrant federal prosecution. Wire fraud, identity theft, and making false statements to government agencies could result in fines and prison sentences that would destroy any possibility of legitimate career advancement. The prosecutor assigned to the case was particularly interested in Derek's systematic approach to financial fraud and his pattern of using false identities to obtain money and services. Derek's attorney contacted my lawyer within days of the criminal charges being filed. The message was simple. Derek wanted to negotiate a settlement that would avoid prosecution in exchange for a full confession and restitution for damages caused by his impersonation scheme. He was finally ready to admit the truth about everything, but only because he faced the possibility of spending the next 5 years in federal prison. The golden child who had spent his entire life being protected from consequences was about to learn that some consequences cannot be avoided through family connections, emotional manipulation, or elaborate deception. Derek's choice was between admitting his lies and accepting responsibility for his actions, or facing criminal prosecution that would make his current problems seem minor by comparison. For the first time in 26 years, Derek needed something from me more than I needed anything from him. The power dynamic that had defined our relationship since childhood was about to be completely reversed, and the spoiled cousin who had never faced real accountability was going to discover what justice actually feels like. The moment Derek's attorney requested a settlement meeting was the moment I realized that everything had changed in our family power structure. For the first time in my life, I held all the cards, while Derek faced consequences that his parents could not shield him from. But I was not interested in simple revenge. I wanted transformation. I hired Patricia Morrison, one of Dallas's most respected attorneys, specializing in white-collar crime and business litigation. Patricia had built her reputation defending executives and entrepreneurs against federal prosecutors, but she was equally skilled at pursuing justice for clients who had been victimized by fraud and harassment. Her first recommendation was to document every aspect of Derek's criminal behavior before agreeing to any negotiations. The evidence we compiled was overwhelming. Derek had committed wire fraud by impersonating me to business contacts across state lines. He had filed false reports with government agencies, which constituted making fraudulent statements to federal authorities. His systematic use of fake identities to obtain credit and services met the legal definition of identity theft. Most seriously, his attempts to interfere with my business relationships could be prosecuted as criminal conspiracy to commit fraud. Patricia's analysis revealed that Derek was facing potential sentences totaling 15 to 20 years in federal prison if prosecutors decided to pursue all available charges. The federal sentencing guidelines for white-collar crime had become increasingly harsh, and Derek's pattern of escalating deception would likely result in enhanced penalties that reflected the systematic nature of his criminal behavior. But I was not interested in destroying Derek's life, even after everything he had put me through. What I wanted was accountability, genuine change, and an end to the family dynamics that had enabled his destructive behavior for decades. Patricia helped me develop a comprehensive settlement proposal that would address Derek's crimes, while creating opportunities for rehabilitation and family healing. The settlement terms were designed to force Derek into complete honesty while providing him with a path forward that required genuine effort and personal growth. Derek would have to publicly confess his lies to our entire extended family, in a mediated meeting facilitated by a professional counselor. He would need to enter therapy to address the psychological issues that had led to his pattern of deception and entitlement. Most importantly, he would have to get a legitimate job and begin repaying his debts through his own earnings. I offered to drop all criminal charges and provide financial assistance for Derek's rehabilitation, but only if he agreed to complete transparency about his past deception and committed to rebuilding his life through honest work rather than family subsidies. The offer included funding for therapy, debt consolidation, and educational programs that would give Derek legitimate skills for career advancement. The family meeting that Patricia arranged was unlike anything our family had ever experienced. With a professional mediator facilitating the conversation, Derek was required to confess the full scope of his deception to parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who had supported and believed in him for years. The process was emotionally devastating for everyone involved, but it was also the first completely honest conversation our family had shared in decades. Derek's confession revealed layers of manipulation that went back to his early teenage years. He had been forging report cards, lying about extracurricular achievements, and creating fictional stories about his social and academic success since he was 15 years old. His parents had been so invested in believing his stories that they had never conducted basic verification of his claims. Uncle Marcus and Aunt Linda's reaction to Derek's confession was a mixture of heartbreak, anger, and desperate attempts to minimize the damage to their own reputations. They had built their identities around being the parents of a successful, ambitious son who exceeded the achievements of his cousins. Learning that their golden child was actually a criminal whose lifestyle had been funded through debt and deception forced them to confront their own failures as parents. My parents' response was more complex. They were relieved to understand why their financial situation had been so stressful and angry about being manipulated into supporting Derek's lies. But they were also genuinely sad for Uncle Marcus and Aunt Linda, who were facing the collapse of beliefs and relationships that had been central to their lives for many years. The most powerful moment of the family meeting came when Derek directly apologized to me for his harassment campaign and acknowledged that my business success was real and earned through hard work that he had never been willing to attempt himself. His apology was not just about the recent criminal behavior, but about years of condescending treatment based on his false sense of superiority. Derek's acceptance of my settlement terms marked the beginning of the most dramatic transformation our family had ever witnessed. He moved out of his expensive apartment into a modest studio that he could afford on an entry-level salary. He returned the BMW to the dealership and began driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic that he purchased with money saved from his new job at one of my former business partners' companies. The job I arranged for Derek was deliberately humble. He started as a customer service representative, earning $32,000 per year, answering phone calls and processing basic account maintenance requests. His supervisor was Sarah, my former employee who had been promoted to management after the acquisition. Derek was required to earn any advancement through performance, rather than connections or family influence. Derek's therapy sessions became a central part of his rehabilitation process. Working with Dr. Michael Rodriguez, a psychologist who specialized in narcissistic personality disorders and family dysfunction, Derek began to understand how his entitled attitude and pattern of deception had developed. The therapy was not comfortable or easy, but it was creating genuine changes in how Derek approached relationships and responsibilities. I established a family foundation that would provide educational assistance, emergency medical support, and small business loans for relatives who demonstrated genuine need and responsible financial management. The foundation's policies explicitly prohibited funding lifestyle expenses or entertainment costs, focusing instead on investments in education, health, and legitimate economic opportunities. Uncle Marcus and Aunt Linda's participation in family rehabilitation required them to acknowledge their role in enabling Derek's destructive behavior. They entered family counseling to address the codependent relationship patterns that had prevented Derek from developing normal coping skills and work ethic. The process was difficult for parents who had never questioned their child-rearing philosophy. The changes in our family dynamics were immediately visible during the next family gathering. Derek arrived on time, dressed appropriately, and spent the evening asking genuine questions about other people's lives, rather than dominating conversations with stories about his own achievements. He thanked my parents for their years of financial support and acknowledged the sacrifices they had made to help his family. Most remarkably, Derek began expressing genuine pride in my business success rather than resentment or competition. He asked detailed questions about how I had identified market opportunities, built client relationships, and managed the challenges of entrepreneurship. For the first time in our lives, Derek seemed interested in learning from my experience, rather than dismissing it as inferior to his own theoretical knowledge. 2 years later, I am sitting at the same Thanksgiving table where this story began, but everything has changed in ways that none of us could have predicted. Derek is carving the turkey this year, a responsibility he earned through consistent reliability and genuine contribution to family gatherings rather than automatic privilege based on golden child status. Derek's transformation has been remarkable and authentic. He was promoted to assistant manager at the customer service center after 18 months of excellent performance and genuine leadership development. His supervisor, Sarah, who initially questioned my decision to help someone who had tried to sabotage my business, now considers Derek one of her most dependable team members. He earns $42,000 per year through honest work and has paid off $37,000 of his debt through careful budgeting and financial discipline. The therapy with Dr. Rodriguez helped Derek understand that his pattern of deception and entitlement had developed as a way to avoid the anxiety and effort required for genuine achievement. Learning to tolerate discomfort, accept criticism, and work toward long-term goals without immediate gratification required completely rebuilding his approach to life and relationships. The process was painful, but ultimately liberating for someone who had spent years maintaining elaborate lies. Derek's relationship with his parents has become healthier and more honest than it had been since his childhood. Uncle Marcus and Aunt Linda learned through family counseling that their overprotective parenting and reluctance to enforce boundaries had actually harmed Derek by preventing him from developing resilience and problem-solving skills. They still struggle with guilt about their past mistakes, but they are committed to supporting Derek's continued growth rather than returning to enabling patterns. My parents have recovered financially and emotionally from the years of stress caused by secretly supporting Derek's deception. They paid off their mortgage using money I provided through the family foundation, and they are planning the European vacation they had postponed for over a decade. More importantly, they have developed a genuine appreciation for my achievements and work ethic that was impossible when they were focused on Derek's supposed success. The family foundation has become a source of pride and positive change for our entire extended network. We have provided educational scholarships for 3 younger cousins who are pursuing engineering and computer science degrees. We covered medical expenses for my grandmother's hip surgery that would have created financial hardship for my retired grandfather. We funded a small business loan for my cousin Jennifer, who wanted to open a bakery in her hometown. The foundation's success has created opportunities for Derek to contribute meaningfully to family welfare for the first time in his adult life. He volunteers 10 hours per week, helping other family members develop business plans, budget their finances, and navigate career transitions. His customer service experience and hard-won understanding of financial responsibility make him surprisingly effective at helping relatives avoid the mistakes that had nearly destroyed his own life. Derek's social life has also improved dramatically since he stopped maintaining false pretenses about his education and career status. He is dating a teacher named Amy who appreciates his honesty about his past mistakes and his commitment to personal growth. Their relationship is built on shared values and genuine compatibility rather than the superficial attractions that had characterized Derek's previous romantic connections. The criminal charges that had threatened Derek's future were dismissed after he completed 2 years of supervised rehabilitation and made full restitution for damages caused by his impersonation scheme. The prosecutor was satisfied that Derek had genuinely changed his behavior and posed no ongoing threat to public safety. Derek's criminal record will eventually be sealed, allowing him to pursue career advancement without permanent consequences for mistakes that he has clearly learned from. Uncle Marcus has become one of my strongest supporters within the family, frequently telling neighbors and friends about my business success and expressing pride in having such an accomplished nephew. His change in attitude reflects genuine recognition of my achievements rather than grudging acceptance. He often asks for my advice about financial decisions and business opportunities, treating me as the family member with relevant expertise. The most meaningful change has been Derek's relationship with money and material possessions. He drives his Honda Civic with genuine pride because he earned it through his own work. His modest apartment is clean, organized, and reflects his actual personality rather than an image he was trying to project. He wears clothes that fit his budget and lifestyle rather than designer items intended to impress other people. Derek still has challenging days when the temptation to exaggerate his accomplishments or take credit for other people's work creates internal conflict. But he has developed healthy coping strategies through therapy and maintains accountability relationships with family members who support his continued growth. His progress is measured in months and years rather than days or weeks. As we finish dinner and begin clearing dishes, Derek pulls me aside to express gratitude for giving him the opportunity to rebuild his life rather than pursuing criminal prosecution that would have destroyed any possibility of legitimate success. He acknowledges that facing consequences for his actions was the best thing that ever happened to him, even though it was terrifying and humbling at the time. The life lesson that emerged from our family's crisis is about the difference between earned respect and inherited privilege. Derek spent 26 years believing that admiration and success should be automatic based on his potential rather than his performance. I spent those same years learning that genuine achievement requires persistent effort, honest self-evaluation, and willingness to fail and improve over time. Our family learned that enabling destructive behavior in the name of love actually prevents the people we care about from developing the skills and character traits they need for genuine success. True support means holding people accountable for their choices, while providing opportunities for growth and redemption when they demonstrate readiness to change. The golden child syndrome that had defined our family dynamics was replaced by a culture that values effort, honesty, and mutual support. Derek's transformation from entitled narcissist to responsible adult proved that even deeply ingrained patterns can be changed when consequences are paired with genuine opportunities for rehabilitation. Looking around the table at family members who now treat each other with respect based on character rather than favoritism, I feel grateful for the crisis that forced us all to examine our assumptions and rebuild our relationships on healthier foundations. Derek's breakdown became our family's breakthrough, creating possibilities for connection and growth that would never have existed if we had continued enabling his destructive behavior. The acquisition that started this story gave me financial security and business success, but the family healing that followed gave me something far more valuable: relationships based on truth, respect, and mutual support, rather than manipulation, comparison, and inherited privilege. Derek is planning to propose to Amy next month, and he asked me to be his best man. Standing beside him as he commits to building a life based on honesty and shared values will be the ultimate proof that our family's crisis created transformation rather than destruction. What do you think is more valuable? Inherited privilege that protects you from consequences, or earned success that teaches you genuine confidence and resilience? Have you ever had to choose between enabling someone you love or holding them accountable for their destructive behavior? I would love to hear about your experiences with family dynamics and personal growth in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other people find content about overcoming family challenges and building healthier relationships. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about personal transformation, business success, and family healing. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing about second chances and the power of accountability. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of the most difficult and ultimately rewarding experiences of my life. I hope Derek's story and our family's transformation inspire you to believe that positive change is possible, even in the most challenging relationships. Remember that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is refusing to enable their destructive behavior and instead supporting their potential for genuine growth and redemption.